How many hours and years of our lives do we spend on work? For nearly all of us, we spend 30 plus years and 1/3 of our days in our vocation. More time, perhaps, than we spend at rest or at play. But this isn't a problem. Why? Because work is good. Work needs to be integrated deeply into our lives and must be in line with our most important goals and values. And if it is, we have a far more complete and fulfilling life experience. Welcome to the How People Work podcast, where we explore the intersection of how humans think and act and how they apply themselves to their work. When you understand both of these things, you'll be equipped to be insightful, compassionate, and compelling leaders. All right, welcome back to How People Work. I'm Jordan Peace. This is Jason Murray. Joining me as usual, your co-host today. Thanks for listening in. Today, we're going to talk about, shocker, we're going to talk about work again, but we're going to talk about work as play. We're going to talk about a positive vision of work and how work can be enjoyable, how work can be fun.
Going to try to anyways.
Dare I say. We're going to try to figure this out. This is not a topic that we've written blogs about, written books about, figured all the way out altogether. But it's something that we're interested in and something that we see as kind of key to figuring out how to see work as a good thing, which is an argument that we've made before, right? And how do we go about enjoying that? How do we go about seeing work as play in the same way that, you know, we as fathers, you know, see our children play, and that play turns into work, and that work turns into play, and they kind of oscillate back and forth. So welcome back to the podcast. I think we probably want to kick off, Jason, if you want to give us a little recap of last week and sort of transition us into this week and this idea, this topic that we're going to talk about.
Sure. Well, in the last episode, we were talking about happiness, and we've spent a couple episodes talking about that from a few different vantage points, but specifically last week, kind of the benefits of happiness to our work and sort of all the research around, how that impacts positively the individual's experience of work, the benefits to the organization in terms of productivity, performance, et cetera, et cetera. And I think, this topic in particular is interesting. And I'll say, we were talking about this right before the episode. We haven't figured this all out ourselves. And so I think through this conversation, exploring some of the ways that we can sort of think differently about the notion of work. And so happiness being something that seems to be catching on a little bit more people are paying attention to it and thinking about it as it pertains to work. And so play similarly maybe isn't, work as play, maybe isn't thought of as, terms that go together very often or very well. But I think there's relevancy there, especially as we think about, well, how do we kind of rebuild a paradigm for work that's more positive and, gives us something to aspire to, I suppose. So I thought it would be fun to start with a question around, what did you want to be when you grew up? So I actually know a lot of stuff about you, but I don't think I know the answer to this question. So
I wanted to be some combination of John Smoltz and Chipper Jones.
Okay.
So any Braves fans
Atlanta Braves
listening in would immediately know those names. And any baseball fans would probably know those as well because they're two Hall of Famers.
So third base and pitcher.
Yeah, well, he was a shortstop before he was a third baseman.
Before they moved him over.
Spent some time in left field when he still had the athleticism to do that. And but Chipper and Smoltz probably being my number one top athlete that I've ever watched.
Yeah.
I mean, it was unsurprisingly, right? Like the idea of playing a game for work, the idea of playing a game for a career, being on that stage and wearing that uniform and having teammates and pursuing a championship and just the pomp and circumstance around that as a child and watching these guys. For me, literally daily. I mean, we had the game on every day,
right?
From April until September or October if they were in the playoffs, which they often were when I was a kid. It just seemed like what what else would you do with your life? Like, why would you do anything else besides play baseball?
Yeah, the boys of summer.
Yeah, exactly. So that was my. What about you, Jason?
So that was it. Baseball.
Yeah.
Very singular.
How about that?
That's great. What was it about John Smoltz in particular?
Man, I feel like I could always get a good read on John Smoltz. Like even as a kid,
Yeah.
I feel like I could read his emotion, and he seemed like kind of what I feel like now. Like he seemed a guy that like he had the talent and he had the
like
ability.
An all-star with a lot of money.
Yeah, no, not that piece.
Oh, okay,
not that piece. Now I'm talking about a young John Smoltz, right? Where he had the talent, he had the ability, right, and he had the aggression. Like he's like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna dominate these guys. I'm gonna strike people out. I'm gonna make them ground into double plays, etc. But I always sensed a little fear behind his eyes. I always sensed a little like, you're not quite sure you can do this, are you, John? And I don't know. I don't know John Smoltz personally. I have no idea if he felt that. That was always my read on him. And I've always felt the same way. I've always felt a natural sense of confidence that like, sure, like I can go out and do this. But like when I actually get out there on the field or I get out there to record a podcast, right, behind my eyes is a little bit of just like, can I really? You know, like
that feels like a good trait, and that seems insightful to me because I mean, how like do you really trust somebody that has seemingly 100% pure confidence?
Yeah,
because I don't. I feel like somebody that appears that way is just BS. Like, doesn't everyone have like a little fear behind them? Like, even if they're really good.
So, I hope they do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think when there's nothing there and there's just complete blind confidence, the word sociopath comes to mind. Do you really?
It's clinical.
Yeah, right. Like, it's a little worrisome, But anyway, I couldn't have described any of that as a 7-year-old boy watching John Smoltz, in the playoffs in the early '90s, right? But yeah, I always was a huge fan of his.
Yeah. So for me, I had 3 main ones. Growing up a military kid, around Marines in particular. My dad was a Marine. I always wanted to be a fighter pilot.
Okay.
And so some of that was like going to air shows and stuff when I was a kid.
Right.
So I saw the Blue Angels like a whole bunch of times. Like I just loved that stuff. I thought it was super cool. And then Top Gun obviously was big when we were kids. And so all of that was just like, man, being a fighter pilot would be so cool.
So cool.
And I always feel a little bad that like maybe I should have been one because I have great eyesight.
You have ridiculous
So many people
eyesight.
are disqualified.
People don't listen to the podcast, don't understand what it's like to be on a Zoom call with you when you're sharing your screen and you're using 8-point font.
Like everyone can see
and
this,
no one else on the call can read what you could read. You're like, you guys should seeing this, okay? And we're like, well, technically we can see your screen, but I can't read a damn thing.
Just assume most people can see, So that paleontologist.
Oh, okay.
But that was mainly because of Jurassic Park.
I was gonna say, I'm like, it's sitting here.
Like, of course, Right. I mean, it was like maybe not so much the dead dinosaurs, but like, what if we could make live ones?
Right,
That would be cool.
Yeah,
and then,
you're gonna find the dino DNA.
Yes, right? That was gonna be me, like in the amber,
right.
I knew how to do all that stuff when I was very young. And
man, that is such a millennial goal right there. That's ridiculous.
Have you watched all the Jurassic Park, all of them? Yeah. Like even the most recent one?
I might be able to still play the theme song on the piano because I learned that when I was like 8 years old.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
I could not do that.
Yeah.
I watched the most recent one too. It was all
good.
of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then marine biologist.
Okay.
Mainly because of sharks.
Okay. Not because of the Seinfeld episode.
And my son got that from me because he doesn't know what a marine biologist is, but he says he wants to be a shark scientist.
Shark scientist.
Yeah. He just wants to see sharks.
Just call it what it is.
Yeah. A shark scientist.
That's great.
So
yes,
it's awesome.
That's perfect.
What do you think it is about? I mean, obviously we became none of those things.
Nope. Swing and a miss.
But there's something, fun to reminisce on that and kind of dream about it. But I do think there are probably clear memories that many of us have from childhood that pertain to like maybe moments of just pure enjoyment when we were doing things. And I'm curious if there's stuff that comes to mind for you where you can recall, you know, things or games or activities or whatever that, you know, you just got immersed in that kind of brought you that sense of joy and happiness.
It's always games for me. It's always games. Sometimes sports, but sometimes like just games, like games that fit in a box and you pull them out and play them, you know?
I know you're a big board game guy.
A big board game nerd. You know, I always get on you for like nerding out on something.
I love
this
board
is
games.
The area where I'm really with you on the nerd side of the house, so to speak.
Yeah.
You know, I think some of my fondest memories in my entire life are sitting down or laying down rather on the pier at on the Chickahominy River here in the eastern part of Virginia, and with my mom and playing Scrabble.
Yeah.
Playing Scrabble. That was our thing. You know, it was the battle of the wits. And I remember since I bet I was, you know, a little bit older than, you know, when kids learn to read. So maybe, you know, 7, 8 years old, something like that, where I knew some words, I knew how to spell some things, you know. And we started playing Scrabble then, and every time we went down to this river house, which is a generous word for this little cabin that was passed down through the generations, but you know, we sat on that pier and we played, and time stood still. You know, I mean, it could have thunderstormed. It could have been a hurricane. I would not have noticed.
Yeah.
You know, we just were in it, and we were playing this game, and I was trying to get the right spot so I could get the triple word score and make sure I got that X on the triple letter score, and like so strategic about it, and just playing with her. And I mean, those some of my fondest memories of my entire life. And you know, and it wasn't baseball, it wasn't the World Series, but it didn't need to be.
Yeah.
It didn't need to be, because to me, being able to have the relational aspect of being with her and playing with her, but also just the competition aspect of like, I'm going to beat this adult at this game, right? Because I can figure out a way, right? And maybe she let me win, I'll never know, right? But I did occasionally win, you know, and that was just a big thing to me, you know, and it's hard to describe because you're like, it's a board game. Like, why is that important? You know, but to an 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old kid, like, there's some of my fondest memories, and like, there's something to that.
Yeah.
There's something to study there. Yeah. As to like, why was that so important?
Yeah.
You know,
why do you think, or what, you know, what about those moments or playing that game, you know, like if you were trying to put it into maybe a few words that kind of resonate to describe it, like how would you?
I think games are they're just a microcosm of how society works, right? Like sometimes I think we overstep our bounds, and we pursue this idea of like complete freedom. Just do whatever you want, whenever you want, however you want, with whoever you want.
Right. Doesn't work.
It's such a mistake, right?
Yeah.
But like, no game works, just like no society works without rules.
Right.
Right? You sit down at a chessboard and you say, okay, well, this is a queen and that's a rook and that's a knight. And then you just move them wherever the hell you want.
Yeah.
That's not a game.
Right.
Yeah, you need rules.
Yeah.
Right. Otherwise, there's no game to be played. There's no kind of mutual agreement on how we're going to go about doing this. Right. So I think part of it is just the microcosm of society boiled down to something that a child could understand. Right. Of just like, here, I take a turn, you take a turn. You form a word. The word has to exist in this certain dictionary, and we were serious. We had the Scrabble dictionary.
Oh yeah,
like
that's necessary.
We would look it up. I knew all my 2-letter words. I knew all my 2-letter words. I had them memorized. Right. So like I knew that I could play XI. That's a word in Scrabble. ZA. That's a word in Scrabble. Right. So I could play that, and I could play across and also connected to this valuable word. Right. Learning that and excelling at that just felt like growing, like a microcosm of growing up. It felt like development. It felt like my intelligence and my intrigue about life was just kind of like brought to, you know, like kind of activated through this singular game. And then of course there's the relational aspect. I'm sitting there with my mom.
Right.
Just me and her. And it was like the whole world disappeared. And that was obviously a beautiful aspect of it. And I miss that, and I miss her, and she's passed away. And, you know, so all the more, you know, now it means even more to me now than it did then to think about those memories. But I think life, and now I'm thinking as an adult, life is really complex and hard, and hard things happen, and it's a lot of information to process. And so when you boil things down to just like, I'm just in this moment in this game to do one thing, it's there's a certain clarity that exists there that doesn't exist in the midst of all the chaos that is life.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, there's a complexity that comes later in life where I think the concept you kind of brought up around the rules is actually really pertinent, because I feel like I go through life sometimes, I'm like, I don't know what the rules are.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing here. Like, what is supposed to happen? What are the rules to play by? Like, it's just, you know, there's far less defined than, you know, it would seem, which when you're a kid, you kind of feel like, man, all the adults know what's going on.
Yeah.
It's like you become an adult and you have kids and you're like, I don't know what the hell's going on.
I know. and like early on, you feel like you have a little bit of a script, right? Because when you're a kid, it's like, well, you just listen to your parents and you obey your parents. Like, that's your job, and those are the parameters, right? And I think that's good parenting.
Yeah.
Like, kids that actually know where the boundary lines are, like, I think those are the fortunate kids in the world that like get to know where are the boundary lines and where can I play, right? And then, you know, you have a script. You go to school, you go to elementary, you go to middle, you go to high, and then whatever the next thing is. For our generation, it was a big push for college. Maybe it's different for the next generation, the previous generation. But there was a little bit of a script, and I just remember 21 years old, graduating school, and feeling like I fell off the face of the earth.
Yeah.
It was like, what's the script? What's next? And everybody was like, you decide. And I'm like, what? Me? I get to decide what's next? Like, no one told me this was coming, right? Like, it's a scary thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, so you get into
and then they hand you a baby next, and you're like, oh, I didn't figure out the other stuff yet.
Right, exactly. That whole imagine you're drowning and someone hands you a baby.
Right.
But, but even before that, right, like just getting into a job.
Yeah.
You know, and now you're responding. There's all these different rules in a job, right? There's bosses, and there's bosses, and there's times you're supposed to be certain places, and there's etiquette, and you're not supposed to say that to those people, but you can say it to this group of people.
Etiquette.
And, right? I mean, it just sort of, I'm with you, but like there's a work culture that you don't, it's almost like kind of like rules.
Yeah.
You know,
they are
in the work game.
Well, they are.
And you don't know it.
They're unwritten rules.
They're unwritten.
For sure.
Yeah, there's written and there's mostly unwritten.
Well, and I think that's the thing is like, if you think about what makes a game fun, it actually is the rule.
It's
like
the rules.
There's two things, right? There's a mutual aim.
Yeah.
Like there's a purpose to the game that we've agreed is like the ultimate purpose.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
It's the how to win section of the rules when you open the book.
Which that's first place I flip.
It's first place
Anytime
you flip.
it's a new game, how do you win? Okay, that sounds fun.
Okay.
Now how do you play? What are the rules?
Right.
But so you got to have that. Like there's an agreed upon aim, and then you've got to have a set of rules that everyone's agreed to play by as well.
Right.
And when you think about it, like when we're kids, I mean, how freaking annoying was it when somebody started breaking the rules and cheating? You're just like, get rid of the cheater.
Right.
Like, shun
Or
the
try
cheater.
to change the rules on you.
You're like, you can't change the rules.
And you've already played half the game, and you've applied the rules that you knew to get ahead, and the rules change, and now you're behind.
Yeah. But I think there's I think there's a takeaway there, you know, even when we're thinking about like the work context.
Yeah.
Like what what is the mutual aim?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what are we trying to do here?
Right.
Like, what is our purpose? Like, what are we aiming for collectively that we've agreed upon that, you know, we can kind of get together and like play the same game? Because if we're not aiming for the same thing, you know, like we're potentially all playing different games.
Yeah. And I think the more you can take those unwritten rules and write them down, the more clarity you're giving the people that work for you. In our context, we run a company, obviously, right? Not everybody that's listening runs a company, but like the more you can either do that as a leader or maybe ask for that or demand that from your leaders, right? To take, hey, all this unwritten sort of nuanced stuff, let's be clear about it. Let's write it down. Let's call it a mission.
Yeah.
Let's call it a vision. Let's call it some values. Let's call it whatever, the rule book, right? That's so helpful.
Yeah.
Like it gives people peace about like, oh, well, now I know what's expected of me, what the rules are, what the aim is, the how to win portion is like written down.
Yeah.
You know, now I know how to act. I know how to kind of perform in this context. And it helps me see the people I work with as my team.
Right.
Because now I know what winning is.
Right.
That's been defined for me. So I can rally these people together and we can go win.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what makes a team a team.
Yeah.
You know, you're not really a team if it's just like, well, we just kind of show up to the same Zoom calls, you know, 3 times a week and like hang around while some person talks, you know, and tells us all the things that they think are, it's kind of boring. It's purposeless. I'm just kind of biding my time, doing my thing, trying to keep my head down. I'm not really going after anything.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why work kind of needs to be play.
Right.
It needs to be a game. It needs to have a way to win.
Well,
you know,
I mean, I know we both like sports and, you know, March Madness has been going on and but it's wild to think about like what's really going on like in a basketball game or in a baseball game. Like, I mean, people go nuts. Like when somebody scores a basket and you're like, what the heck is that about humans?
You put a ball into a metal ring with the nylon hoop or the nylon net hanging from the bottom of it. Right. That's all you did.
Why is it so exciting to us?
Because we know all the work that was put in. We know all the strategy that was put in. We know, and we also identify with a certain team because we have nostalgia, we have memories, and we know that we either went to that school or our parents or our whatever like cheered for that team. And so we associate with that. But like, I think it's because it's hard, right? It's hard to do. And so when you see people achieve things that are really hard to do, you cheer for that. It's almost like just the human condition is just like life's hard. And when you have a big win or any one of us has a big win, it's like, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's such a crazy, perfect metaphor though. When you think about it, it's like they're literally aiming for a basket.
Right.
Like they're aiming something.
Yes.
Towards a basket in the same way that we kind of metaphorically like aim towards a goal, aim toward, right. And so, I mean, I feel like it kind of indicates that there's something sort of intrinsically, you know, in us as human beings. It's like we aspire to, or we admire, you know, people aiming for a high goal that, you know, requires some difficulty. And, you know, we see kind of the, you know, maybe potential of human beings, you know, in that because we admire, you know, what it is that they're doing, but it doesn't have to live at that level alone. Like, you know, we also can have goals. Like we can also aim for things and like strive to achieve in similar fashions.
Yeah. Sports is it's just the easiest place to see the work.
Yeah.
You know, you see the fitness of the athlete, for example. You see that, I mean, you see them run up and down the court, and like if you've played any basketball, or if you ever like, you know, I'm just going to use basketball for example, but like, you know, we're in our late 30s, right? Which is crazy to say out loud, but like we're in our late 30s. Like I know from experience, like if I show up on a basketball court and I run up and down the court, like, you know, I know 7 or 8 times, I'm winded. I'm winded. These guys are running up and down the court hundreds of times.
Yeah.
Sometimes at a full sprint.
Right.
Sometimes at a jog. And then I've got to guard a guy and I got to jump and I got to rebound.
Yeah,
I got to fly out of bounds. I got to grab a ball. I got to throw it at some guy's leg so that it bounces off and then it's our ball. Like it's just chaos for, 40 minutes, maybe longer if you're professional. Like, so from watching that and from your own experience, like, oh my gosh, like the work that was put in to get even one's body in shape enough to do the thing that's being done is insane.
Yeah.
Right. And then, the scrupulous work that a coach put in to figure out the X's and O's and to figure out how to, or we're gonna set a screen and we're gonna run off of that, and then that guy's gonna come off the screen and go towards the basket, and we're gonna pass to him at the back, like all of that. So it's just clear with sports. It's just like, oh, I can see the work that was put in, and I can see what success looks like because the ball goes through the basket, and the game ends, and somebody wins and somebody loses, right? And like business it's harder to see all of that, right? It's harder to see because most of our challenges in business, as we're sitting here typing away at our computers, it's not a physical challenge. We don't have to be in incredible shape to do the thing that we do, but we do have to have an incredible amount of resilience, right? We do have to be able to bounce back. We do have to be able to lose and learn from the loss and change our tactics and try again. We have to have the courage to try new things. We have to have the courage to fail and own that and own up to that and say, hey, that was me. That was my idea. It didn't work, right? Yeah. There's different sort of challenges that we face in business than what's faced in sports, but it's no different. It's just less obvious.
Right. Yeah, because it's still a challenge is a challenge.
A challenge is a challenge.
Whether small or large. And it's really interesting because this concept of flow, I know you and I have talked about that a little bit before, not on the podcast, I don't think. But
I don't think so.
The most common analogy when you hear scientists talk about flow is athletes. And so the concept of flow is like where you become so immersed in an activity that basically you lose sense of like time and space and like you're just in it, like totally. But it requires like, so the scientists that studied this stuff and unpacked it, it requires having a goal. So like you actually can't experience this sense of flow if you're not aiming for something. So it requires that. That's why athletes often are kind of ones that experience this greatly because they have a very clear goal.
The goal is so obvious.
And there's challenge. So that's another part of it that's required is a sense of challenge. So it's like something that's just beyond your ability. So it stretches you a little bit, but it's not so far beyond that you can't actually accomplish the thing.
Right.
And so that's part of it. And then the other part, coming back to something we were talking about in the conversation, is rules. You have to understand how to do the thing before you.
Right.
So it can't be a total mystery to you. Like, how am I going to, achieve this goal? Like, I have no idea. It has to be something that you actually know how to do it.
Right.
You know the rules, you know how to play it. And so there's that sense of like, I know the rules, I know how to play it. There's challenge and there's a specific aim that I'm going for. And it's crazy the sort of positive benefits that they found that this flow experience creates. I was actually talking to a chief people officer that we're friends with recently, and I was just interviewing her about some other stuff. But I was talking about, hey, what are some things that your company's focused on this year surrounding the employee experience? Is something that I'm thinking about a lot these days. And one of the things she described very explicitly was trying to make space for employees to have more flow experiences in their work. And I was like, that's crazy. Like, I've never even heard a company
use that expression.
Yeah, talk about it that explicitly.
Yeah.
But they were kind of onto this idea of like, well, we have to design the work experience in such a way that people can feel these things that create this really good positive feedback loop around kind of experiencing work as play. And I think I feel like it's fair to call that play, because I think those flow experiences seemingly arise out of play experiences, or what we might describe as play.
Yeah, I don't think there's much difference. I really don't. It's sure. Like, do kids get paid for playing games? No. And we get paid for work? Yes. You know, like that's the fundamental difference between the two. But like the same is true, right? Businesses exist to make money, right? Like that's why they exist. Someone had an idea and they thought, I should I should build this product or I should launch this service and people will pay for that service. And because they pay for that service or product, we will make money, right? Like that's why it started. There was a clear goal in mind and there was a clear path to that goal. And ideally the business owner or the business founder or whatever knew how to do it, right? Or had an idea exactly about how to accomplish the goal. You know, it's no different than when one of my kids, you know, whether it's my 7-year-old or my 10-year-old or my 5-year-old, they pull out a board game and they're like, let's play. They got the same thing in mind.
Right.
They're not thinking, let's play, I hope you win.
Right.
Right. Let's play, I'm going to win.
Right.
Right. Like that's
Right.
why they're playing.
Yeah.
You know, they want to set up, they want to spend time with me. So just, let's, you know, I want to ignore that aspect. There is a kind of communal aspect to this. But they want to achieve something, right? Like that, they're feeling as though, hey, I want to accomplish something today. So I'm going to pull out this game. I'm going to play with my dad and my mom or both or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm going to try to beat them.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to win. Like there's no difference. And we started this company that we started in Fringe and like, what was our goal? You know, like, hey, we got an idea. Nobody's doing this.
Right.
We'll get out there. We'll own the category. We'll win.
Yeah.
You know, and winning means different things. It's owning a category. It's having a platform. It's making money. It's hiring people. There's a lot of things that you can kind of dump into the category of what does winning look like. But in the end, we just wanted to win. You know, like we just wanted to win at a game.
Right.
It's just there's no difference
We've
at
been
all.
beat up by a few games before that.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, totally. Yeah. And the you know, it depends on your personality, but sometimes the more you lose a game, the more you want to play it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I find the idea of, you know, thinking about our kids pulling out that board game and wanting to play, like one, not only do I resonate with that and how that feels and experiences I had when I was a kid, but you know, that same sense of like, can we capture some of that feling and drive and kind of bring it into like our work context where it's like, like I want to do it for the sake of doing it, you know, like there's a communal aspect, like you said, and it feels like in play, there's a relational aspect to all of it at some level because you're not going to just, there's very few things that you play sustained by yourself for a long period of time that are as enjoyable as things that you can play with others. And so I think it's just a really cool idea to think, like, how do we bring that into, you know, the way that we approach our work or think about our work?
I think that sounds like the next episode of How People Work.
Does it?
I think it's what it sounds like to me. So let's wrap up. Let's end this episode. Let's get it to the next one next week. But before we finish, you need to give me a word of the week for next week so I can be prepared for this.
I do. So the word of the week is going to be recuse.
Recuse. All right. I'm like 90% sure I know what that the definition of that exactly is. I will Google it before we get started on recording next week. But thank you so much for listening to How People Work. I feel like we ask ourselves like one or two questions this week and then we talk for half an hour. So sometimes that happens that way. Hope you enjoyed listening. If you want to reach out to us, get on LinkedIn, find Jason Murray, find me, Jordan Peace, send us a question. We've had some folks do that already, which is we really appreciate. It helps prompt us in terms of questions to ask each other or even topics for unique episodes that we've yet to record. So please do reach out if you get a chance to do so. Thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.